Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to our Youth Leadership webinar series. Our webinar today is going to be Year 1 Lessons as a Youth Mental Health Nonprofit Leader, presented by Henry Zhu, who is Chief of Staff to the Chief of Programs and Operations at the JED Foundation. And I'm Shira Collings, and I'm the Youth Coordinator at the National Empowerment Center, and I'll be moderating the webinar. If you can go to the next slide. This webinar was developed in part under a grant from SAMHSA at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the Center for Mental Health Services, the Substance Abuse or Mental Health Services Administration, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So this webinar will be recorded, and the PowerPoint presentation and the audio recording of the teleconference will be posted at our website. That's power2u.org, and you'll be emailed a certificate of attendance. You should be getting that by tomorrow. It may take a little bit longer, but you'll get it in the next few days. Next slide. So at the end of the webinar, there will be a Q&A session. So we invite you to ask questions at any time through the question function. And questions will be taken in the order that they're received. And you're also welcome to make comments using the question function. We really encourage you to share your thoughts throughout the webinar and for this to be interactive. I did want to say we may not get to every question today because we have a lot of people signed up for this webinar, but we will try to get to everyone. Next slide. In the next webinar in our youth leadership series, we'll showcase different ways in which youth leaders are influencing research, using research in order to challenge existing ideas and practices and to further advocacy for systems change. And it's going to take place on Tuesday, October 12th at 4:30 Eastern. So we welcome you all to join us for that. So I'll now turn it over to Henry, who will introduce himself and get started with the webinar. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Shira, and the NEC for the invitation. And thank you all for attending, and really excited to share more about JED and kind of my own story today. So yeah, a little bit about me. I've been a lifelong New Jersey resident. You know, I grew up kind of in Somerset County, which is near Central Jersey, and now I'm closer to North Jersey. But a lot of New Jersey pride. In college, I went to Harvard, got a bachelor's in psychology, and you know, a lot of my classes there were focused around, you know, my interest areas, which are kind of in adolescent development and kind of in identity development, particularly related to ethnicity and race. I also took an interest kind of later in my college career in kind of school mental health policies and how we can support youth and teenagers in their growth within school. And in college, I was the chair of our sports section. I covered the basketball team for 3 years, big sports fan. I also took on some roles in our school administration, specifically around student support and education of our honor code through my involvement with the Honor Council. And that was a great way to just present to different classes and different student organizations about the importance of academic integrity and to support different students in that process. And some of my personal passions, big outdoors person, love to go hiking and traveling and all that. I play a lot of soccer. watch a lot of soccer, read a lot about soccer, so I'm very much into that. And also big fan of like competition reality TV, so Survivor, some cooking shows like Chopped, Big Brother, things like that. And then I also have a little collection of snapback hats that I started, in high school and everything, and still kind of going strong. So that's a little bit about me. Kind of about more about Jed. So as Shira said, I am the Chief of Staff to the Chief of Programs Operations at JED. We are a national nonprofit that's focused on protecting emotional health and preventing suicide for our nation's teens and young adults. We were founded about 20 years ago through a family that unfortunately lost their son to suicide. And through that process, they realized that kind of the college that he was attending and many other colleges around this nation didn't really have a concrete and comprehensive plan for addressing suicide and kind of an extension that addressing mental health on their campuses. Through kind of convening different experts and coming up with what we call a comprehensive approach that I'll share later, in these past 20 years, we've really focused on supporting adolescents and young adults, especially those who are in that school boundaried environment, on how to properly create systems and a culture really of care to support the mental health of these students. So a little bit more about like our mission here and our vision, as you can see here. At the core of our work is kind of working with colleges and high schools on building this comprehensive system and kind of meeting schools where they are in that journey of supporting their students. And so, that's the core of our work, but we also do a lot with kind of youth-facing organizations and companies on how to, message around mental health and promote resources and really kind of look comprehensively at these different systems. And so our end goal, as you can see down here, we want to create a society where mental health is recognized as part of general health and wellness and not associated with shame, secrecy, prejudice, or uncertainty. And that's something that Jed believes in and I'm really, really passionate about as well. And as you can see here, we really target youth age 13 to 30-year-olds. We work with community organizations, we work with schools, as I mentioned, employers, youth-facing organizations, media, entertainment companies, and really try to, use like a public health model and look at all these different touch points where teens and young adults are located. And some of our programs, our signature program is JED Campus and JED High School, where we work with a school. We've been in over 350 colleges at this point, and we just started our high school program. We're in around 25 high schools and rapidly expanding that program, but really supporting colleges on their programs, their policies, their systems around mental health, and working with administrators, working with students on figuring out, what can be done better and how can we, build that culture of care that we believe is so important. And then we also have a few different campaigns. One's called Seize the Awkward. It's a partnership with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Ad Council. And we partnered with a few celebrities like Billie Eilish on just promoting messaging around the importance of help seeking and supporting your friends and having those difficult conversations around mental health. And that's just one example of some of our campaigns. Set to Go is one that's focused on the emotional transition out of high school to adulthood. And we have a bunch of awesome online resources, around helping kind of teenagers build important life skills and adjust for some to college, for others to the working world. Just a snippet of that, and more than happy to share more about some of our programs. And as I mentioned, the core of the work that we think is so important to every kind of community that we advise is what we call our comprehensive approach. And there's 7 of these wheels here that you can see, starting with kind of developing life skills, promoting social connectedness, and then working on identifying students at risk, increasing help-seeking behavior, providing mental health and substance misuse services, following crisis management procedures, and then restricting access to potentially lethal means. So this really, is under is the core of what we work with schools on, and we believe through this process there should be equitable implementation of this plan, meaning that all students, especially those who are part of more vulnerable populations, should be focused and addressed. So that's really what underlines all the work that we do. So yeah, a little bit more about my journey and my experiences. So I was lucky enough to intern at JED my junior year, entering my senior year of college. And what kind of drew me to JED initially was that it was a way to kind of strengthen our school systems and educational settings at like a larger level or a broader level. I think from my own personal experiences, growing up in high school and in college, I think more emphasis could have been placed on supporting the emotional well-being of students, on increasing mental health supports in the same way that our schools obviously prioritize academics. I think more attention could have been placed here because so much of my journey growing up, and I'm sure many others here, was about kind of learning how to navigate, the emotional and the social part of of adolescence and young adulthood. And I think schools are an awesome place, and honestly, like the place where a lot of these things need to be addressed. And so that really inspired me, and throughout my time in college, to think about, okay, what can be done better, how can we create more positive environments in schools. And I was a psychology major. Obviously, I did a lot of this work in college, and I wanted a way to translate that at a broader level. So this opportunity at JED came up, and after my internship, I really was passionate about this and kind of wanted to stay and continue to be impactful in that work. And so I think, especially kind of as someone coming out of college, and someone who's a little bit on the younger side in the working world, just being able to kind of contribute and on a variety of these projects and initiatives across the organization, apply some of my experiences, and really make sure that the youth voice is part of our work that we do with colleges and high schools and other organizations. I know that might sound obvious, but I think it's important that in every school that we were part of, and every decision that might be made, that there is that youth voice and that youth input. And just give an example, like when we work with a college, there's a student focus group that we pull together that I really like to make sure that when we make recommendations to colleges, that students are part of that process. And so I just wanted to continue that and build upon that and find other ways where my voice as a recent graduate can be impactful. So that was like another big reason I joined. And then for me personally, I'm sure this might be the case for a lot of you as well, just kind of gaining clarity on my own career path. I think I am still honestly trying to decide if I want to go more down the clinical route and work more on a one-on-one basis with, I think, youth and teens, which is the area, the populations groups that most appeal to me in my career. Is that more on a clinical level? Is that more on a public health model, which JED is more about, or even kind of move into more management roles in nonprofits. So I think this role at JED gave me a lot of flexibility in exposure into that, because every day I'm interacting with our clinicians, our senior leadership, some of our what we call our campus advisors or our high school advisors, some of the people on our research team. So it's a very diverse kind of group that I'm working with and learning from. So that was another reason that I joined JED. And yeah, what I'll say is like, my role and my position might be relatively unique. I'm not sure if every organization has something like this, but I think throughout today, some of the things that I've learned and some of my observations, I hope can translate in whatever role that you may have. So, it doesn't mean that I hope it's not just, oh, this is not something that I'm currently part of or I'm a member of. So maybe this might not be relevant. I really tried to design this to, hopefully there's some nuggets in here that you can draw upon. So yeah. And then a little bit more about my role. This was what I call things that I would list on my resume, but I do a lot of programs and operation management and kind of supporting our CEO and supporting our chief programs and operations officer, just in growing some of our programs and doing reports and seeing like how things are going. A lot of outreach and partnership work. So, we're connected to a lot of other nonprofits, a lot of youth-facing organizations, other people in our network, and so a lot of that has, my role is kind of explaining what JED is about and following up and seeing about, is there ways we can collaborate or share resources. Some is about strategy development, so JED is kind of that exciting space where we're continuing to do great work with colleges and high schools, but really trying to think about other ways we can expand our impact. And so one example of that, as you can see below, is our advocacy work. So through all the things that we learn in advising schools, like are there things that we can draw upon to influence legislation, currently mostly at the federal level, and other places where more funding could be useful, that we can provide expertise on. So that's one example. And I also co-lead our professional development committee. So every month we have different lunch and learn sessions and webinars like the one like this one today. So really organizing that, and sharing different resources I come upon, and other sorts of special projects that might come my way, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. And then this is kind of what I'd say is more of a colloquial way of saying what I do. In many of these, my job. So a lot of times I'm a resource gatherer. If I need to pull things from online or from certain documents that we have, I'm subscribed to a lot of different newsletters and really trying to see if there's anything that would be appealing to our organization. I put together some reports and strategy documents. A lot of times I'm brought in as a brainstormer, and this is where I kind of want to double down on me being kind of on the younger side and having some knowledge of different platforms that youth are on and different things that are appealing to them. So really trying to bring that voice to a lot of the meetings that we have when we're thinking about what sort of campaigns we should be involved in or initiatives or things like that. So kind of along those lines, I provide a lot of feedback to some of our documents, and we're part of a few coalitions. For example, one is the Mental Health Liaison Group, which is kind of an advocacy-based coalition. All the big behavioral health nonprofits are represented. So I'm kind of the liaison to that, and kind of relating things to our leadership team that I think are relevant. Sometimes I'm a data collector. I kind of track all the different events and presentations that our staff are a part of. So it's a good way to like see what's going on in our organization, because we're relatively big for a nonprofit. We're close to 50, I think, at this point, and rapidly growing. And so any interesting things that our staff is participating in, sometimes I'm just the hub of that information. So it's like an exciting way to learn about what's been going on. And then now I've kind of taken this role. Sometimes on weekends I'll monitor our social media. So it's another way to get some exposure to kind of our external communications and things that are going on social. So yeah, I think just that was a little bit about me and my role and more about JED, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about that and share some resources. But I just wanted to move more into this section and really focus on this today, which is some more practical recommendations and things that I've learned. Um, I think for my role, and I really try to encourage people here to think about how this maybe applies to your organization, and even if this is not part of your job title, your description, or things that you're involved in, it'd be great if you can think about, these are some ways that maybe I can incorporate into my job and in order to just strengthen my position or kind of become more of a leader. So the first one I said here is really understanding our organization's like short and long-term goals and what levers need to be pulled to advance those goals, because whether it's a small organization or larger organization, obviously we have limits on our time, our capacity, and our resources. So what sorts of partnerships or connections are important to build that'll help advance our goals. For example, one of our goals is obviously to continue to reach more schools and through that, reach more youth. So what are the sorts of connections maybe with state level leadership or different nonprofits that are already working with schools that can grow our reach? So really thinking about that. Are there, different resources or concepts that staff should be aware of? Where, for example, a lot of these new mental health apps that are coming out, um, you know, I think just building that understanding will be very valuable, especially, for my job, a lot of it is less so. I don't have a concrete task or a role in some of these bigger projects. It's more for me to create. I think that's why it's just important just to continue to stay on top of things and be like, oh, maybe our JED or the company or organization that you're part of should look more into mental health apps, because a lot of youth are engaging with them. So just things like that, or a service that we can provide to our partners. So sometimes to build that relationship with someone or to get to know someone better, you might need to conduct a training session or a webinar. So I think some of this might have to come with you talking to your manager or other people in your leadership team. Like, where do you see our organization growing, and what can I do to be a part of that? And outside of what I'm currently doing, is there something that I can contribute to if it's clear that strategically you know putting some more effort into that will help grow your organization's mission. And then I think another skill that I realized is sort of the pitch that I just, not really the pitch, but just like the summary that I just gave of like what JET is, what our mission is, what our impact is. I think some people might call this an elevator pitch, but I would just really say like, trying to summarize to someone who might not have a lot of time, why the organization part of it, why whatever you're involved with is important to you and to the organization as a whole is really, really important. And I think in whatever job or role that you're part of. And here I also said, our goals, I think that also kind of ties into the first point. But through that, I think just familiarizing yourself, with the numbers, for example, the number of schools that you might be engaging with or the number of youth that you might be reaching, some of those numbers, some of those terminology, such as for us, like what the comprehensive approach means, and then really trying to pull in narratives, because a lot of times, tugging on those heartstrings and having a story ready, I think can be very, very important. Um, and then, yeah, just as I mentioned, whatever new accomplishments that's your staff or others in your organization that you're involved with, just keeping tab of that. What are some new initiatives? What are things that leadership is thinking about as far as long-term strategy? I think is really, really important. And yeah, finally, I think realizing just in your day-to-day what are areas that are lacking in capacity. Is there's certain parts of your organization where staff might be a little, you know, over limited or, you know, kind of overwhelmed, and what can I do to kind of contribute to that, those efforts, you know, to help them out as a project or advisor, and obviously being mindful of, you know, your own limits. But if there's areas where, especially for, you know, someone who's coming in on the younger side, um, you know, just really trying to contribute, and even just say like, oh, can I provide feedback on something, I think would be tremendously valuable. And then just to kind of build a little bit more on that, just continuing, just kind of build those strong relationships. And this doesn't have to mean like everything is work related, but sometimes having those check-ins and getting to know staff members on a personal level will help. And through those conversations, you might be able to realize, okay, is there an area that I can assist you, or they can assist, you know, me on? You know, is there a specific passion area there that you can learn from? Are they involved with something maybe outside of their role, or even inside, like within their role, that they can refer you to? So I think that has been tremendously valuable for me, just having the chance to interact with a lot of people, different people in different roles on our staff. And the same goes with external partners that you might be engaging with, just, you know, um, keeping those relationships going and checking in, and, you know, always asking that question, like, you know, is there something that I can do that can be of benefit to you? And, you know, is there somewhere I can strengthen that relationship? I think is just something that has been helpful for me, in my experiences so far. Um, just a few other things, I think, just basic like content analysis, report writing, presentation skills. You know, a lot of this isn't things that are maybe in a textbook, like how to do this, how to do that, but just, um, you know, being aware of how to summarize things, so that, if your supervisor or other people in the organization only have, you know, a minute or two on their when they're reading their emails or they're interacting with you, like, trying to summarize that, I think is very valuable, and you know, presenting your work clearly in writing and verbally, I think, are very important skills, regardless of whatever role that you're part of. And then, yeah, I think just, that flexibility to step into new tasks and be a continuous learner. So one example is, you know, I realized that, you know, we might need some help in monitoring our social media, so I kind of volunteered, and I have been on weekends to do that. You know, if there's a webinar that needs to be led, sometimes I'll be a part of that, or a panel discussion. So, just, especially as someone who might be on the younger side, just continuing to be flexible and, step into places that are needed, and challenge yourself a little bit in that area. And I think, you know, the one thing I'll add is, you know, obviously every dynamic is kind of different in the organizations or the initiatives that you're a part of. But if you can think about allocating 10% of your time, to be flexible and to step in and do things that might be a little bit outside of what you're expected to do, I think that, you know, it would help tremendously. And, I think it's something that I would encourage everyone to think about having conversations with, because that's been really helpful. Just, allowing myself to learn and myself to grow, by having that flexibility. So yeah, and then I'll just move on next to some big picture lessons that I learned. And some of this is a little bit repetitive, but, you know, don't be limited by the roles and responsibilities of your description. And, I think for youth advocates and others, I think just embracing that role as an expert in, you know, maybe it's something like, you know, the other day I had to kind of explain what Twitch and what Discord was, and that a lot of people are on that for gaming purposes. Um, you know, what new trends are happening on TikTok, or, you know, different ways that maybe remote learning has impacted you, or others that, you know, I think, you know, we bring such a valuable experience, and background to all this, that, you know, you don't need letters behind your name really to call yourself an expert. I think all the things that, you know, we've experienced this past year with COVID and our reckoning with racial injustice, um, just our day-to-day engagement with social media, or um, our experiences as, especially for me, being um, sort of advising schools, like, we're the closest participants, or those with experience in the system. So really embracing that, um, I think is something that is valuable for any organization, especially those that serve youth, right? So we need more people like this in these different organizations. And I'm a big advocate of kind of youth coordinators, or what at JED we call them, JED student ambassadors. People who, as I said, don't need to necessarily have names, letters behind their name, but are equally as valuable in many ways to, professionals or people with degrees, because of the lived experience that we have. And so below you can see some questions that might just be helpful to ask yourself, like, how should this new service or initiative be better messaged, if that's something that your organization, or things that you're involved with, really bringing that youth voice. Where can organizational resources be allocated? How can an organization better support youth employees and advocates? These might seem like very big questions that only members of your senior leadership, or others who are much more experienced should be answering. But honestly, this is exactly my point: is we are experts in our own right, and so don't be afraid to get involved with some of these decisions that you might feel like might be out of your comfort level, but in reality, we need your or organizations need our input on, right? And so that's kind of a little challenge that I have, is these higher level decisions. I think it'd be great if at least we had a seat at the table. My second one is just don't be afraid to start your own project, or be that voice to connect leadership to different project individuals that excite you. So I'm sure a lot of people here are involved with different campaigns or different initiatives, or follow different things on social media. So don't assume that people in your leadership, or others in groups that you're part of, are aware of that. So if you have something that's a little bit more youth focused, like a campaign or a resource, some influencer, um, these are things that because of their reach, I think is important, for to consider. And sometimes that might be you starting your own thing. And so one example I JED is I kind of took a lead on what we call our student engagement toolkit. So once we were part of a school, like, how can we engage students at that school to be involved with different mental health initiatives, and to start their own projects. So I took a lead on creating that toolkit. Past year, with what happened with kind of discrimination and violence against Asian Americans, I kind of took a lead on pulling together different mental health resources that we shared in a statement from JED, and that are part of, like, our what we call our diverse mental health resource kit that will go on our website soon. So those are just examples that I drew from my own personal experience, obviously, but I think we're really, hopefully, helpful for our organization. And then, yeah, just that last question, like, who are you in touch with? I think for any sort of initiative, organization, just continue to build that network. So, friends that you're aware of, different people that you've been able to network with, bringing that into your organization, I think really adds to your value, and especially those that kind of are on that younger side or are involved with youth campaigns. So that's a big thing that I learned this year, is just think about your network and who might be helpful for working with you. And then this is a thing that I think I mentioned, but just continuing to prioritize your own well-being and your own boundaries. And sometimes, as someone who's maybe on the younger side, or um, you might be pulled into a lot of different things and expected to take care of that work. And I think it's really, really important just to delegate and communicate that, I have my boundaries, and many of you might be in school still or have other obligations. So, um, you know, don't be afraid here to, just set your own pace and communicate that this is where my capacity is at, and, um, draw those boundaries, right? Um, and then I have two more. So, my fourth lesson, just kind of be open and transparent with your own experiences, and find those people, those environments. Sometimes it might be support groups, sometimes it might be other communities outside of work, even, or that you're comfortable sharing your own story, because so many of us carry such valuable experiences, and sometimes those are a little bit difficult. But if that's comfortable with you, just kind of being open about it, and I think that not only builds trust and credibility, um, but really um, kind of adds value to the work that you do, and brings respect, and sometimes might lead to something, right? Like, um, some of my experiences growing up as an Asian American, in honestly, like a mostly white community, I've experienced things and I've seen things that are unique to my perspective, and so bringing that to our organization, and really advocating for greater resources and support for this community, I think, um, is a product of my comfort level in sharing my own experiences. So, um, I think that this comes with, um, where you are with whatever initiative or organization you might be a part of, but really being open and transparent has been really, really helpful for me. And, a lot of people come in and, uh, you know, support, or find areas of support for you too, or, um, help guide you along as a mentor too. So I think, um, just taking that position has been really helpful for me. Um, and then lastly, I would just say, we as youth leaders, or others that you're involved with, are still in that exploratory stage. I still am not totally certain about my career. Like, do I want to become a psychologist? Do I want to kind of continue to take more of a management role or work more in policy? And this is me after a year of going through this and explicitly, coming to JED as like one of my goals is to gain greater clarity. I think a little bit more of clarity, but I think just continuing to, as I said here, pick the brains and learn from different colleagues and those in your network, I think are very, very valuable. So just finding interest areas or areas of expertise for people that you're working with or you're interacting with, and getting their perspective, I think, um, you know, is really important. And, when you engage with people like this, I think just being proactive and saying, like, what skills or knowledge do I need to build, to allow me to kind of build upon and take that next step? And are there things that I should be reading? Are there things that I should be, who should I be talking to more? I think those are just very, very valuable. And being proactive and saying, like, okay, what are some growth areas for me? I think sometimes it's hard for people to give more of that constructive feedback. So from your angle, I think it's important just to be direct and say, okay, what areas can I improve upon? So, um, yeah, I think those are some big lessons, and I'd be happy to go into a little bit more about these things, at the end. And then here I'll just add some resources that I found helpful this past year. So for my role, like, really building my expertise in mental health and emotional well-being, and some of that is more direct support, like mental health first aid, QPR, emotional CPR, which the NSC kind of leads. So I would just encourage people to look, kind of continue to see if there's different focus groups, advisory councils, especially those that need, like, youth advocates, um, and try to get involved with those. Maybe that's in your school environment, maybe that's in your local county or kind of city. Um, there's different peer support organizations and ways that you can be involved as a mental health advocate. And if you're a part of some sort of institution, whether that's a company or in your school, just thinking about, okay, can I be like that mental health or that wellness liaison or lead some initiative there, I think would be a great starting point. And then here I just attached some leadership courses or resources that I've been exposed to. So Youth Move National has this like Youth Advocate Leadership Academy that's really awesome and focused on equipping individuals with lived experience on taking greater leadership roles. Um, the Institute of Nonprofit Practice has this community fellows program for young professionals. And yeah, so be happy to share more about these opportunities if you're interested as well. Um, Last thing I mentioned, and this is something that I'm still working on and kind of a side project, but um, and I'll be happy to share more as well. But I'm in the process of creating just like a community of Asian and male identifying kind of young adults or teenagers and trying to engage in collective learning and mentorship. So this is not specifically like a support group, but it's more just building that community, where we can talk about things like our culture identity, what it means to be an Asian male, how to find purpose, how to navigate family dynamics, how to take care of our emotional well-being. So, um, this is something that is a product of my past experiences, some of the things that I've learned, and if this is something that interests you, just let me know. So yeah, that was all I had, and I know we might be, we might have time for Q&A, so be happy to take those, any questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Henry. That was a great presentation, and I really appreciated everything you shared. So we have a few different comments and questions. Please feel free to keep sending in your comments and your questions. We definitely want to be able to answer things and have some discussion. So our first question is, do you support local advisory councils?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think, as I said before, just especially for youth, being a part of those councils and having that voice in those decisions. I know there's one in my hometown in Somerset County that I've looked into joining, and I think that's a valuable way to kind of build leadership skills and learn about local policies. So I would strongly encourage involvement with that.
Great, thank you. So our next is a comment and a question. So the comment is, what a meaningful and precise presentation. Wish this had come around much earlier in my career. Had to discover much on my own. So kudos for putting this together for youth leaders today. And I just want to echo that. I really think this is so valuable for youth leaders. And so the question is, what would be the first steps for a youth seeking to access leadership at nonprofits today?
Yeah. I think honestly, like with a lot of the things that are going on in a lot of these nonprofits, a lot of leaders might not have the most time, but if you offer something valuable or bring some perspective or if that's, I have this campaign that I'm launching that I think would be in line with your organization's mission, or do you need help with a specific project or something that, that organization is working on, and really engaging on that level so that leaders see, oh, this is something that would be helpful for us, would be a great first step. And I think I would also just encourage people to, don't be afraid to reach out, if this is on LinkedIn or if they have some sort of contact information on their website. Like, I'd love to have just like an informational interview or learn more about your work and find ways that I can help. I think A lot of leaders, like obviously they are very busy, but if you can explain, why you're interested in their work and maybe their background as a leader, I think there definitely are opportunities. And for me, like I would be more than happy to have those sorts of conversations with people. And if you want to reach out, I'd be happy to share that and love to learn from you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, and if you want to put your contact info, I don't know if you shared that, but if you want to put that in the chat, you can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Also have another comment. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Maybe say if you can share that with others. Yeah, so we have another great comment. Thank you, Mr. Henry, for insight and passion, especially during the Suicide Awareness Month. As a peer support specialist, I am constantly looking for resources, and I just posted the JED website on our UHG, Employees Recovery and Resilience page. Thanks again. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We actually just redid our website like this month. So a lot of things that you're saying are new, but yeah, really, really appreciate that.
Yeah. Did you have any maybe comments or anything you wanted to share about it being Suicide Prevention Month, or sorry, Suicide Awareness Month, and um, any further reflections
Yeah,
on
yeah. I've been really inspired just on social media and some of the other schools and organizations that we're part of to see like all this attention and not just like, general awareness, but the sharing of resources and strategies and tips. And, um, for example, today on our Instagram, we posted something about how to be resilient and different strategies around that. So I think, that's been really encouraging to see. And, tying in with general mental health kind of awareness recently with a lot of different higher profile people coming out. I think it's such a exciting time and impactful time in the mental health and suicide prevention community, and just continue people to encourage kind of the momentum for this, and um, you know people to step up and be advocates, and um, find ways to spread this message. I think is really, really impactful. So really excited to see all the great work that is being done, including the NEC. So
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing for youth leaders to be involved in too. So I think it's a really great time to be having this webinar. Yeah, we don't have any other questions, but I just want to leave maybe a few minutes in case people have more questions that they want to submit. Yeah, is there anything you wanted to add in response to any of the comments so far?
yeah, no, I really appreciate all the comments, and as I said, I want to like learn from all of you as well. So my email is there, and I'd be more than happy to have follow-up conversations if you have other questions, if you have things in writing that you want to send to me. I'm very, very receptive to that. So, um, you know, feel free to reach out if needed.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sure we will get a lot of people reaching out who want to learn more. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we'll be posting the recording on our website. So I'm sure there will be a lot more people watching the recording too. We have another comment here and question. It looks like this presentation was very informative. Thank you. I am the CEO of a peer-operated peer support organization who was recently licensed to provide youth and young adult peer support services. I am having difficulty recruiting candidates. Any advice?
Um, yeah, just from Jed, like if you want to send me that information, I'd be happy to see if there's ways we can amplify that. Um, I would say, a lot of people at, in college campuses, if that's what you're looking for, or even high schools, um, I think I would encourage you to think about reaching out to them. Like there's different student peer groups, um, different mental health organizations. JED is very actively partnered with Active Minds. And so, uh, you know, through some campus outreach, maybe there will be opportunities there. So, yeah, again, I'd be happy to follow up for more information there.
Great, thank you. Those sound like great ideas. And we have another comment. Thank you so much for Henry for sharing your wisdom and insight. And thank you, Shira, for moderating. Thank you all for sharing the space today and for your thoughtful comments and thoughtful questions and supportive comments. Yeah, I really want to also thank everyone who joined in and who's commenting and asking questions. We really appreciate it, and it's great to hear some of the questions you have. And then we have another comment. I just want to add that everyone should study this webinar afterwards, each step, each suggestion. This holds all the good stuff from a leadership forum. Be intentional, as is suggested throughout. Take your life and plans in your hands.
Yep. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think one other thing, I'll add is, my journey has not been the smoothest. Like I've learned a lot of things, and um, it's okay again to make mistakes or to take a step back. And coming into college, I was basically okay. I'll probably do law school because I was more of like a history person, and every semester I would take a psych class. And it was honestly my senior year where I was like, okay, I think obviously I have enough credits, but this is my passion. This is an area I want to go into, and just working with a lot of students in my time in college, and learning myself because college wasn't really the easiest for me either. So, um, you know, I think just it's okay to reflect and sometimes make those mistakes that allow you to grow. So, um, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I definitely think that's such an important part of leadership is being able to kind of take a step back and learn from maybe things, mistakes or things that you'd like to do differently going forward, or kind of opportunities. Yeah. It looks like that's pretty much all the comments and questions that we have. So I think we can go ahead and end early. I'm sure there will be more questions and comments from those who watch the recording, and maybe you want to get in touch via email.
Yeah. I don't know if those in the recording can see the chat, but my email is just henry@jedfoundation.org. So hopefully that's pretty easy to remember.
Yeah, great.
Great.
And I just wanted to share again, our next webinar is going to be on October 12th, and that's on youth-led research and youth leadership in research. So we really welcome everyone to join us for that. And we'll have some other upcoming webinars on youth leadership and different approaches to youth leadership that we'll be sure to send announcements about. So you'll get that if you're on our mailing list, and we'd love for you to join us for those. Thank you so much, Henry, for this great presentation and for your great answers to all the questions and comments. And thank you, Say, who's kind of handling the tech and all the questions and comments for the webinar. So, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you at our next webinar in the series.
Great. Thank you so much.